I wasn't supposed to hear what I heard. The call had already ended, or so she thought. 5 years. 5 whole years without a single word from Marla. No texts, no accidental likes on old photos, no birthday pity messages. She disappeared like a ghost with a mouth full of secrets and a body full of lies. Then yesterday, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, and I made the worst mistake I've made in years. I picked up. "Hello," I said, already annoyed. It was her voice. Still smooth. Still fake. "Hey, Owen. It's Marla." I should have hung up right then. I should have launched my phone into the river behind my apartment and walked away. But instead, I stood there in my kitchen, holding a chipped coffee mug and listening to the voice of the woman who destroyed me from the inside out. "I know this is out of nowhere," she said, "but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. What I did back then. I wasn't in a good place. I was confused, and I've regretted it more than you know." I didn't respond, because I didn't believe her. I'd spent years stitching myself back together with bitterness, sarcasm, and late-night therapy podcasts. I didn't want her apology. I wanted silence and peace, but she took those too. Then came the part that shattered the floor beneath me. "Also, there's someone I think you should meet." Before I could even form a sentence, the call dropped. Or so she thought. I didn't hang up. She didn't either. That's when I heard it. Her voice, now distant, but still audible. She was talking to someone else in the room. A man. I don't know if it was on speakerphone or just her being careless, but what I heard next glued my feet to the floor. "He has no idea. God, if he finds out the truth about the real reason I left, it's over. All of it. Everything I've built." A pause. Then the man spoke. Arrogant. Calm. "Then don't tell him. You said yourself he's pathetic. He'll show up, cry a little, and leave. Like he always does." They both laughed. Laughed. At me. The call ended a few seconds later. I stood there, heart pounding, coffee forgotten, staring into nothing. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped the mug. It shattered across the floor, just like my sense of stability. 5 years of silence. And now she calls. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, but to bait me. For what? And what did she mean by the real reason she left? I thought it was the affair. The cheap hotel. The text I wasn't supposed to see. The night she didn't come home. But apparently, that was just the surface. And whatever she's hiding, whatever she thinks I'll cry and walk away from this time, she's wrong. I've cried enough. And I'm not leaving quietly. Not this time. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, her words echoing over and over like a curse. If he finds out the real reason I left. That sentence was now a loaded gun in my head. What reason? What was worse than cheating? What was so bad that even 5 years later, she still needed to hide it? By 4 a.m., I had already booked a rental car. Not because I missed her. Not because I forgave her. But because I needed to look her in the eyes and force the truth out, whatever it was. If I didn't do this, it would eat me alive. I've already been hollowed out by her once. I wasn't about to let her do it again in silence. Marla lived in Rosehaven now, a small, polished town 2 states away. I knew because her name came up in a stupid real estate article someone posted in a Facebook group we used to be in. Local broker Marla Wallace scores top listing. That was 3 months ago. I saved the link. Not because I cared, so I told myself, but because some sick, bitter part of me still couldn't let go. She'd always wanted to be someone important. It looked like she finally got it. When I arrived, I parked half a block away from her office. I sat in the car and stared at the building for 10 minutes. Watching people walk in and out like everything was normal. Like the woman inside hadn't detonated a bomb in my life and walked away without flinching. Then I saw her. She came out of the building wearing a white blazer, phone to her ear, laughing. Actually laughing. She didn't look sick. She didn't look broken. She looked like someone who had everything under control. I followed her. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But I wasn't going to confront her in public. I just needed to know where she was going. She got into a black Lexus and drove across town to a nice gated neighborhood. I stayed far enough behind to avoid suspicion, but close enough to track her. She pulled into the driveway of a large 2-story house with a red door. 2 kids were playing basketball in the front yard. One of them looked about 5. My stomach twisted. She got out of the car and called to the boy. "Eli, time to come inside." Eli, the same age as the number of years since she vanished from my life. I couldn't breathe. I watched as she hugged the boy and ushered him inside. The other child, maybe a neighbor, ran back across the street. I sat there for what felt like hours. I couldn't move. My brain was screaming at me. Ask the question. You need to know. Is he mine? But that wasn't all. That man's voice from the phone call. The one who said I'd cry and leave like always. I recognized it now. And it wasn't just someone she worked with or dated. It was someone I knew. Someone I had once called a friend. And if I was right, then what she did wasn't just cheating. It was betrayal on a level I hadn't even imagined yet. I started the car. I wasn't driving home. I wasn't going to disappear. This time, I was walking straight into the fire. I didn't plan to knock on her door. I didn't even know what I planned. Confronting her in front of that little boy felt wrong. If he really was mine. If. That word had been burning a hole in my brain since she called. But I knew I couldn't just walk away now. I couldn't unsee that kid's face. His messy brown hair, the same way mine looked when I was that age. The way he squinted up at the sun like he hated it. It was all too familiar. So I waited. I parked down the street and sat in my car like a stalker until the sun started to dip and the shadows got longer. Then I saw them again, Marla and the boy, out in the backyard, throwing a football back and forth. They were laughing, and for a second, I felt something I didn't expect. Not rage. Not jealousy. Grief. I had missed 5 years. Birthdays. First steps. First words. I hadn't even known he existed. And now here he was, alive and whole, just a few hundred feet away. And I was some stranger sitting in a car with no clue what to do. Then the man stepped into the yard. I felt my jaw clench before my brain even registered who it was. Sawyer. Sawyer Grant. Not just a former coworker. My former best friend. My best man. I almost got out right then, but I forced myself to stay seated. I needed to understand what the hell was going on before I exploded and made things worse. I watched from the shadows as Sawyer picked up the football and tossed it lazily toward the boy, Eli. My stomach flipped as I heard him say, "Nice catch, buddy." Buddy, not son. But I still wasn't sure. I needed proof. I needed something that didn't just live in my gut. So I did something desperate. I waited until the house went dark. Midnight. 1 a.m. I walked up the side yard, careful not to step on anything loud. The fence gate wasn't locked. I slid through and crept toward the back porch. I wasn't proud of it. But this wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about truth. That's when I saw it. A box, cardboard, half-torn, sitting near the recycling bin. Inside, baby photos, old envelopes, what looked like hospital paperwork. I reached in and grabbed the top one. It was a discharge paper. Name, Eli Wallace. Mother, Marla Wallace. Father, left blank. My heart stopped. I flipped through a few more. A birth certificate copy. Same thing. No father listed. So she did hide it. She gave birth without telling me. Gave my son her last name. Never contacted me. Never even gave me the option. My knees almost buckled right there. But then I saw something else, stuffed in the corner of the box. A tiny hospital bracelet, still curled up from years ago. Baby's name, Eli Wallace Chamberlain. Chamberlain. My last name. So she had acknowledged me, at least once. Before she erased me from the paperwork. That wasn't a mistake. That was intentional. And now Sawyer was playing backyard dad, while I was left in the cold with a 5-year hole in my chest. I put everything back. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't steal anything. I just walked back to my car, sat down, and tried to process the volcano erupting in my skull. She knew. She always knew. And now she wanted to reach out. Only because it was convenient for her. But what she didn't know was that she had just started something she wouldn't be able to control. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about accountability. And I was done being the quiet, emotional idiot she left behind. I didn't go home. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town and sat in the parking lot for almost an hour before checking in. My hands were still shaking from what I'd seen. Eli Wallace Chamberlain. That little hyphen was the only piece of honesty Marla had left behind, and even that had been buried in a cardboard box like it was trash. I barely slept, just laid on the stiff mattress with my mind spiraling in every direction. The betrayal was deeper than I ever imagined. She didn't just cheat on me and run away. She stole years of a child's life from me and gave the role of dad to the one person she knew would hurt me the most. By morning, I had a plan. No more watching from the sidelines. No more begging for answers. I was going to confront her face to face. Not at her house. Not around her son. But in a place she couldn't control, couldn't script, couldn't hide behind Sawyer or fake apologies. I walked straight into her office. The receptionist looked up and gave me that polite, blank stare that people save for awkward situations. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, but she'll want to see me. The nameplate on her door still said Marla Wallace, managing partner. She had everything she wanted. Her dream career, her suburban fantasy. And me? I was the ex she'd thrown away like I didn't matter. Except now, the past she buried was standing in her lobby. Before the receptionist could stop me, Marla's office door opened. She stepped out, heels clicking, phone in hand, her voice professional and light. Then she saw me. Her face froze. For a second, it was like she'd seen a ghost. She ended the call mid-sentence. Owen. She didn't sound happy. She sounded scared. We need to talk, I said quietly, trying not to lose it in front of the stunned staff. Now. She hesitated, then motioned me into her office. The moment the door closed, the fake smile vanished. You shouldn't be here. Neither should your lies, I said. Eli? Really? You were going to die with that secret? She swallowed, her eyes darting toward the window blinds like someone might be watching. Classic Marla. Always calculating. I was going to tell you. That's why I called. 5 years too late, I snapped. You told Sawyer first. You moved him into that kid's life before I even knew he existed. Her expression changed, less defensive, more panicked. Owen, Sawyer's not. Don't lie, I cut her off. I heard the phone call, the one you forgot to hang up. Her breath caught. Gotcha. You said if I found out the real reason you left, everything would fall apart. So go ahead. Tell me. Tell me what you were really running from. She sat down behind her desk like it was armor, folded her hands, and for the first time in years, I saw her drop the mask. I wasn't just cheating, she said, voice low. I was pregnant, and I didn't know whose it was. That sentence hit like a sledgehammer. You what? I whispered. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you saw the messages. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to ruin your life even more. Ruin my life? You erased me from my own kid's life. She stood up, suddenly flustered. I didn't know what to do. I was ashamed. I figured you'd never forgive me anyway. And then Sawyer. He helped me get on my feet. He wasn't supposed to stay, but he did. And Eli thinks he's his father. I felt something inside me snap. So you just let that happen. You watched him grow up calling Sawyer dad, while I lived like none of it ever happened. Tears were in her eyes now, but I didn't care. She had 5 years to cry. I had 5 years to be a father. I turned toward the door. Where are you going? She asked. To fix what you broke. She chased after me. Owen, wait. You don't understand. There's more. You think that's the worst of it? I stopped, but didn't turn around. She took a breath. I got a paternity test. Years ago. I knew the truth, and I still kept you away. I turned slowly, my voice cold. And she looked down, then up. You're his father. The words hit me harder than I expected. You're his father. I had been preparing myself for every possibility, every outcome except that one. It was like I wanted to be angry, to be justified in walking away, but now I was the guy who had missed 5 years of his son's life because of her decision. And nothing was ever going to give those years back. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin folder, hands shaking. I kept this. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew one day you'd come looking. She slid the file across her desk like it was a peace offering. Inside were 2 documents, a sealed court-ordered paternity test, and a notarized letter that had never been sent. I didn't even open the envelope. I didn't need to. My name was right there on the top of the report. Owen Chamberlain, 99. 98% probability. I sat down across from her, too stunned to even breathe properly. So let me get this straight. You got the results, knew I was his father, and still gave him Sawyer's name? No, she whispered. Eli's legal name is Wallace. Sawyer never adopted him. But I let him think that was his dad because it was easier than the truth. Easier. The word made my stomach turn. She stole my son from me because it was easier? I want to see him, I said flatly. Today. She stood frozen for a second. Owen, it's not that simple. He doesn't know you exist. Not my problem. That's on you. He'll be confused. Upset. I've been upset for 5 years. I stood and turned to the door, then paused. You don't get to protect your lie anymore. Either I tell him, or I go straight to court. And this time, I won't walk away quietly. She didn't try to stop me. She just sat down slowly in her chair like the air had left her body. He's home after school. 4 o'clock. I nodded. I'll be there. At 3:58 p.m., I was parked a few houses down from her place again. This time I wasn't hiding. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding me together. I kept checking the clock, my heart pounding harder with every passing second. I had no plan for how I was supposed to introduce myself to a 5-year-old who didn't even know I existed. How do you look into the eyes of your own son and say, "Hi, I was stolen from your life before you could learn my name"? At exactly 4:02, the front door opened. Marla stepped out first, looking like she hadn't slept since our meeting. Behind her, Eli bounded down the steps with a backpack twice his size and a wide, curious grin. My heart stuttered. I didn't just think he looked like me, he was me. Same chin, same messy eyebrows, same nervous energy. It was like looking at a photo of myself from decades ago, only alive and breathing. I got out of the car slowly and started walking toward them. Eli spotted me first. He tilted his head and squinted, like kids do when they're not sure if they're in trouble or about to get candy. Marla kneeled down and said something softly in his ear. He looked confused. He looked at me, then back at her. I stopped at the bottom of the steps, afraid to get closer, afraid I'd say the wrong thing and ruin everything before it even began. "Hi," I said, my voice cracking like I was the child. My name's Owen." He looked at me and didn't respond. He was holding a small action figure in one hand and clutching Marla's fingers with the other. The silence stretched out for what felt like hours. Marla finally stood up and nodded. "Do you want to come inside?" I followed them in. The house was spotless. Too spotless. Like she'd spent all night scrubbing away guilt and preparing for a performance. Pictures lined the hallway. Eli's baby photos, preschool portraits, vacation snapshots with Sawyer. Not one photo of me. Not even from when we were married. We sat in the living room. Eli perched awkwardly on the edge of the couch while I sat across from him. Marla hovered like a guard, eyes darting between us, hands clenched so tightly I thought she might bruise her own palms. "I know this is strange," I began, trying to smile, "but I'm someone who used to know your mom a long time ago." Eli looked at her. "Is he your friend?" She froze. "He's more than that." I decided not to wait. "Eli, I'm your dad." The room went silent. He blinked. "But Mommy said Sawyer's my dad." Marla winced like she'd been slapped. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I know," I said gently. "That's what you were told. But the truth is, I'm your real father. I didn't know about you. Not until this week. And if I had, I never would have left." He just stared. Then he asked a question that gutted me in the softest voice I've ever heard. "Why didn't you come to my birthday?" My throat closed. I couldn't speak. Marla started to tear up behind him. "I wanted to, I managed. I didn't know when it was. I didn't even know you were born. But I want to be there now. For everything." He looked back at his toy and nodded slightly, like he didn't understand but accepted my answer for now. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small blue dinosaur, something I had bought from a gas station gift shop that morning because I couldn't show up empty-handed. "I got this for you." He took it slowly, turned it over in his hands, then gave the faintest smile. But just as hope began to creep in, the front door opened. "Sawyer." He froze when he saw me, and I stood up, chest tight, fists clenched. Because in that moment, I realized something even more disgusting than the affair. Sawyer wasn't just the man who took my place. He had known all along. The moment Sawyer saw me standing in that living room, everything shifted. His jaw tensed, like he'd walked in on a crime scene. But what really made me snap wasn't his surprise. It was the way he looked past me, right at Marla, and the way she dropped her eyes, like she already knew what was coming. He shut the door behind him, calmly. Too calmly. "I thought you said he wasn't going to come," he said to her, not to me. I stepped forward. "So you knew about me? You knew I was Eli's father?" Sawyer didn't answer right away. He looked down at Eli, who was now watching all of us with wide eyes, clutching the toy I'd given him like it was the only stable thing in the room. Marla rushed over and picked him up. "Why don't you go play in your room for a bit, sweetie?" He didn't argue. He just nodded, walked off, and closed the door behind him. That silence left behind was heavier than any shouting could have been. I turned back to Sawyer. "Answer me." He finally looked me in the eye. "Yes, I knew." My fists clenched at my sides. "How long?" He exhaled through his nose, like he was somehow the victim here. "Since the beginning. Marla told me the day after she took the paternity test." I stared at her. "And you let him stay around Eli? You let him play house while you pretended I didn't exist?" She looked like she might be sick. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, but it was convenient, right? I said, he was already in your bed. Why not let him steal your son too? Sawyer stepped forward. Don't talk to her like that. Oh, you don't get to protect her, I snapped. You stood next to me at my wedding. You toasted us. You shook my hand and told me I was the luckiest guy alive. And the whole time you were what? Waiting for her to crack? She was already broken when you met her, he said coldly. You just didn't want to see it. Marla gasped. Sawyer, stop. No, he said, turning to her. You wanted him to know? Fine. Let's give him the whole truth. He looked back at me with a kind of smug pity that made my skin crawl. She didn't leave because she cheated. She cheated because she wanted to leave. She was done with you long before I ever touched her. My voice came out quieter than I expected. That's supposed to make this better? It makes it real, he said. You were clinging to a marriage that had been dead for years. Then why didn't she just say so? I asked. Why not end it like a human being instead of setting it on fire and pretending I was the problem? Marla stepped between us. Her voice was shaky but loud. Because I was a coward. Because I wanted both. Because I didn't know who I was without someone there. And you. She turned to me. You were safe. You were kind. But I was already too far gone. I stood there, swallowing every emotion, trying not to explode. And now? Now you want what from me? Forgiveness? A co-parenting plan? No, she said. I want Eli to know you. That's all. I looked between the two of them. Then stay out of the way. Sawyer scoffed. You think you can just walk back in and be his father? After 5 years? I'm not walking back in, I said. I'm walking through everything you two tried to bury. I headed toward the door, then stopped one last time. And Sawyer? If I ever hear you're calling yourself his dad again, we'll settle it in court. I walked out. Not because I was finished, but because I had finally started. It took 3 weeks before I saw Eli again. Not because I didn't try, but because Marla stalled. Emails, phone calls, delays. He needs time, she kept saying. He's confused. She wanted to manage the damage like a PR crisis. But I wasn't going to disappear this time. I hired a lawyer. I filed for paternal rights. And for once in my life, I didn't fold. I stood my ground. Then, one afternoon, she called. No attitude. No control in her voice. Just a simple, tired sentence. He wants to see you. We met at a neutral place, a quiet park on the edge of town. Marla stayed back in the car while Eli sat alone on a bench, legs swinging. I walked up slowly, nervous like it was a job interview I didn't deserve. He looked up and smiled. Hi, Owen. That hurt more than if he hadn't said anything. But I smiled back and sat beside him. I brought something, I said, reaching into my coat. It was a small photo album, one I had made the week after everything came out. Pictures of me as a kid, of my parents, my old dog, even my high school graduation. I wanted him to see where he came from. Not just DNA, but history. He flipped through the pages slowly. You looked weird with long hair. I laughed. Yeah, I thought I was cool. Were you sad when you didn't know about me? I nodded. Every day? But I'm here now. He didn't say anything right away. Then he closed the album, looked up at me, and asked, Do you want to come to my school thing next week? I have to sing. It's dumb. I could barely speak. I just nodded. That day turned into the first of many. I didn't try to take over. I didn't drag Marla back into old arguments. I focused on Eli, on showing up, listening, being there. Sometimes he'd still call me Owen, and that was okay. He needed to go at his own pace. But one night, after his school performance, he ran off the stage and hugged me first. Not Sawyer. Not Marla. Me. And he said, Did I do good, Dad? I couldn't answer. I just held him. Because there are some things you don't ruin with words. Marla watched from a few steps away. She didn't say anything, but I saw it in her eyes. Real regret. Maybe not for everything, but enough. As for Sawyer, he slowly faded out of the picture. Eli stopped calling him Dad, not because I asked him to, but because kids know when someone is pretending. They feel it. Sawyer was a chapter. I was the story. We're not a perfect family. There's no fairy tale. But there's honesty now, and time, and a chance to rebuild what should have never been broken. And honestly, that's more than I ever thought I'd get. I found the earring in a cereal box. No, seriously. I was pouring April her usual Saturday morning breakfast. Honey oat circles in the green bowl with the little turtle sticker on the bottom, when something clinked. I fished it out, thinking it was one of her toy beads again. But nope, it was an earring. Not Mallory's. Not even remotely hers. Mallory only wears hoops or studs. Simple, predictable. This one was long, dangly, and had a tiny red gem at the center like a drop of blood. I just stared at it in my palm. Everything went quiet in my head. Even April's constant humming sounded like it was coming from another planet. And then the most disturbing part. Mallory walked into the kitchen behind me, looked at the earring, and said nothing. Nothing. No, what's that? No, that's not mine. No, where did you find that? Just silence. I stood there like a statue, my hand still open. She grabbed a mug from the cabinet, filled it with coffee, and acted like the shiny red betrayal in my hand didn't exist. So I said it. I said what any husband would say in that exact moment. Who does this belong to? She sipped her coffee. One sip. One long, deliberate sip. And then, it's not what you think, Colby. Which, by the way, is exactly what you say when it's exactly what I think. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at her, like she was a stranger in my house. Like this woman who once sobbed with joy the day our daughter was born could also walk into our kitchen like it was just another morning, while the proof of her betrayal rattled inside a cereal box. I asked again, who does it belong to? She paused, set the mug down, looked right at me, and said, "You're being dramatic." And there it was, the beginning of the gaslight parade. Forget that I found a random woman's earring in our pantry. Forget that I was out of town just 4 nights ago for my uncle's surgery. Forget that Mallory forgot to pick up April from daycare on Wednesday because she was working late. Apparently, I was the one creating problems. Apparently, I was imagining things. Apparently, I should have just finished pouring the cereal. I didn't argue. I didn't say another word. I placed the earring on the counter, grabbed my jacket, and went out to the garage to sit in my car like a ghost. I stared at the dashboard clock for 39 minutes. Then I opened my phone. Then I typed, "How to know if your wife is cheating." Then I opened Reddit. And now I'm here, typing this, because I know what that earring means. I know what her silence means. And I know, God help me, that this is just the beginning. I didn't go back inside the house until late that night. I waited in the car for hours, not even listening to music, just staring at the dark outline of my home through the windshield like it was some unfamiliar place. You ever feel like you're sitting outside your own life, watching someone else make decisions for you? That was me, a prisoner behind the wheel, too scared to walk back into the lie that was pretending everything was fine. When I finally stepped back in, the house was quiet. Lights off. April asleep. Mallory had left the earring right where I placed it, on the marble kitchen counter like it was a coaster or a gum wrapper. Still gleaming. Still screaming. I couldn't sleep. Not a wink. I lay in bed beside her while she snored softly, and all I could do was wonder who she really was. Who had been in my house. Who had leaned against my kitchen counter, maybe kissed her neck right where I used to. And how many lies had I swallowed thinking she was tired, overworked, stressed, whatever excuse I could tell myself just to not face the truth. The next morning, I did what I told myself I'd never do. I went through her purse. That alone made me feel sick, like I was the one doing something wrong. But I was past caring. I needed answers. Something. Anything. I found a hotel key card, tucked behind a lip balm she hadn't used in months. One of those sleek black cards from a downtown boutique hotel we could never afford. I Googled it. Found out it was the Valley Nora, the type of place influencers stay and post room selfies with robes and gold-rimmed wine glasses. I memorized the number etched on the card. Room 304. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to be sure. I didn't want another denial or some twisted version of "you're imagining things, Colby." I needed to get ahead of it. I needed to know. So I did something I never imagined I would. I took the day off work, dropped April at daycare, and drove downtown with that key card burning in my pocket like a live coal. I pulled into the parking garage, heart pounding, legs stiff. Everything about me screamed, "Don't do this," but I couldn't stop. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and walked the hallway like a detective in a bad drama. Room 304. The numbers stared back at me. I knocked. No answer. I waited, then used the card. And the door clicked open. The room was clean, quiet, empty. But there were signs of life. A water bottle on the nightstand. A receipt for room service in the trash with 2 entrees ordered just 3 nights ago. And in the closet, I found something I wasn't prepared for. A tie. Not mine. And not just any tie. It was embroidered on the inside. I flipped it over and saw the name, A. Kessler. I had no idea who that was. But it didn't matter. Because what mattered was Mallory had been here with him. Recently. Repeatedly, by the look of it. I stood there in the center of the room, holding the tie like it was radioactive. My head was spinning. My mouth was dry. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was confirmation. This was betrayal. When I left the hotel, I wasn't thinking straight. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel so tightly I left dents in the leather. And then, without even realizing what I was doing, I texted her. Just 5 words. Who is A. Kessler, Mallory? No emojis. No punctuation. Just cold fact. She read it instantly. And I swear, within 30 seconds, she called me. Her voice was rushed. Breathless. Fake calm. Colby, wait. What are you doing? Where are you? That tie. It's not what you think. I didn't say a word. And then she said it. The thing that made my stomach twist so hard I nearly opened the door just to vomit. Please, it was just one night. One night. Just like that. 3 seconds of honesty, and my whole marriage collapsed into dust. I didn't answer her call. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I knew I'd either scream or beg, and I hated myself equally for both possibilities. So I sat there in the parking garage, phone buzzing in my hand like it was alive, watching her name light up the screen over and over. Eventually, the call stopped. Then the texts came. Long ones. Short ones. Panicked ones. Calm ones. The kind of messages that contradict themselves every 3 sentences. I didn't read them right away. I just drove. No destination. Just turned onto streets I didn't recognize, because the idea of going home, of seeing her face, watching her pretend this was manageable, felt unbearable. I kept thinking about that tie. About the embroidery. Someone confident enough to personalize his clothes wasn't someone passing through her life by accident. By the time I finally pulled over, it was already dark. I opened the texts then. The first said I was misunderstanding everything. The second said she didn't want to talk about it over the phone. The third said she loved me. The fourth said I was going to ruin everything if I didn't calm down. That one stuck with me. I was ruining everything. Not the man in the hotel room. Not the earring in the cereal box. Not her. Me. When I got home, she was waiting in the living room. Sitting upright on the couch, hands folded, like she was waiting for a job interview. April was asleep. That made it worse. The house felt staged, like she'd prepared the scene. She started talking before I even closed the door, her words spilling out fast, rehearsed. She said it was complicated. She said she felt lonely. She said I'd been distant. She said it was just one night and that it didn't mean anything because meaning belonged to us. I asked her one question. Just one. I told myself I deserved at least that. How long? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything, but she still tried to salvage it. She said she didn't know exactly. She said it wasn't consistent. She said she never meant for it to turn into anything. I asked again, slower this time. How long? Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones, I think. She whispered, since February. It was October. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because something in me finally cracked. February meant birthdays. Holidays. Family dinners. That meant she'd smiled across tables while lying to my face. That meant every time I blamed myself for feeling disconnected, she was already elsewhere. Then she said the sentence I will hear in my head for the rest of my life. It was just a meaningless mistake. One night shouldn't destroy our family. I asked her which night she was talking about. The first one? The second? Or the one where she came home and kissed April goodnight after leaving a hotel with another man? She didn't answer. She just cried harder. Reached for me. I stepped back like she was a stranger. That's when she told me his name. Arden. Not A. Kessler, she said. Those were his initials from a middle name he never used. She said he worked with her on a short-term project. That it started as talking, then venting. Then one night, she didn't come home. She swore she ended it. She swore it was over. She swore I was the only one she loved. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. If it was over, why was the earring still in my house? Why was the hotel card still in her purse? Why did she panic when I asked instead of laugh it off? She begged me not to tell anyone. Not my parents. Not her parents. Not even my closest friend. She said it would destroy our image. That word, image, hit me harder than any insult. Not our marriage. Not our family. Our image. I told her I needed time. I grabbed a jacket and went to the garage again, because apparently that was the only place I could breathe. I sat there shaking, feeling pathetic for still loving someone who had made me feel this small. And then my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't her. It was a message request from a name I didn't recognize. And it said, "You don't know the half of it." That's where I am now, sitting in my car, reading that sentence over and over, realizing this story is bigger than one night, bigger than one man, bigger than anything she's admitted. And I'm terrified of what comes next. I stared at that message for what felt like an hour. You don't know the half of it. It came from someone named Lena K. No profile picture, no bio, just a blank gray avatar and a name I didn't recognize. I thought it was spam at first, some scammer trying to prey on the vulnerable. But then I noticed the timing, how quickly it followed my confrontation with Mallory. And the way it was phrased, it felt personal, like someone watching from the outside but knowing the inside. I hesitated. Then I replied, "Who are you?" No answer. Not for a long while. I sat there in the dark, eyes glued to my screen, heartbeat thudding in my ears. And then, just when I gave up and was about to turn off my phone, 3 little dots popped up. Typing. I work at the Valley Nora Hotel. I clean the rooms. My blood went cold. I've seen your wife there before. With him. It wasn't just one night. There it was. The lie I already knew but couldn't prove. Validated. By a stranger. Last week they were in 304. Before that, 212. Always Thursdays. She tips in cash. I sat upright. Thursdays. That was April's ballet night. The night I stayed late at work to give them space, because Mallory said she liked their girl time. I felt sick. I asked Lena why she was messaging me. Why now? Why not sooner? Her answer was blunt. I thought it was just a fling. But she left something behind last week. I found pictures. I froze. Of your daughter. Of your house. I asked her to stop texting. I wasn't ready for this. I wanted to believe it was some elaborate prank, someone trying to mess with me. But the details were too specific. The rooms. The cash. The Thursday pattern. The thing about the pictures, that chilled me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't even lie down. I just sat in the garage, engine off, air cold, trying to piece together how long I had been living with a stranger. The next day, I waited until Mallory left to drop April at daycare. I searched her closet, her bags, her car. I wasn't proud of it, but pride wasn't part of this anymore. I needed truth. Real truth. Not the filtered, tear-stained version she offered the night before. And behind a stack of old photo albums in the hallway cabinet, I found a black folder. Inside were printed photos. Real ones. Glossy. Cropped. Personal. One showed Mallory in that same hotel robe I'd seen online when I looked up the Valley Nora. In another, she was sitting cross-legged on a bed, wine glass in hand, laughing into someone's neck. And then, buried halfway through the stack, was the one that broke me. It was April, sleeping, in our home, taken from the doorway of her room. And behind her, barely visible in the hallway mirror, was the reflection of a man holding a phone. He wasn't taking a picture of her. He was taking a picture of himself with her in the background, like she was a trophy, or a reminder, or a warning. That's when the shaking started. I dropped the photos. My hands couldn't hold them anymore. I backed away like they were on fire. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just lies. Someone had been in my house, with my child, while I was gone, while I was trusting. I picked up my phone and messaged Lena again. "Do you still have the pictures?" She responded instantly. "I have more. I didn't want to send them unless you were ready." Ready? I didn't even know what ready meant anymore. But I told her to send them. She did. And what I saw, I'm not sure I can even describe yet. Because this wasn't just cheating. This was planned, calculated, and it went back much further than I ever imagined. The photos Lena sent me that morning didn't just change how I saw Mallory, they changed how I saw myself. I always believed I was just unlucky. The guy who worked hard, kept his head down, loved his wife, and still got blindsided. But after I opened those files, I realized I hadn't been blindsided at all. I'd been walking through a fog she created, step by step, while she lit the path for someone else behind me. The first photo was dated almost 2 years ago. I double-checked the timestamp. That was during the weekend I took April to visit my sister out of state because Mallory had said she needed some quiet time. She told me she was feeling burned out, that she wanted to stay home alone and decompress. I even felt guilty for leaving her. I offered to cancel the trip. She insisted I go. But in the photo, she wasn't curled up on the couch watching Netflix. She was standing on a hotel balcony in a black dress I'd never seen before. And next to her, there he was, Arden, or whatever the hell his name really was. Same smug posture, same arm around her waist, same look on his face like he owned something that didn't belong to him. Another photo showed the two of them inside a fancy restaurant. She was leaning over the table, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Candlelight, wine glasses, the whole affair. A date. A real one. Meanwhile, I was driving 5 hours with a cranky toddler and a diaper blowout on I-70. What destroyed me most wasn't just that she had been cheating for that long. It was the care she put into it. The consistency. The planning. The confidence she had to build an entire second life right under my nose. Not just physical betrayal, emotional architecture. This was someone who carefully separated herself from her own family, brick by brick, every time she smiled in my face. I told Lena to stop. I couldn't look at another photo. She agreed. She apologized, even though she wasn't the one who owed me anything. I thanked her. I didn't know what else to do. Then she sent one final message. Check your attic. At first, I thought she meant that figuratively. Like there were skeletons in the attic, secrets hidden in the past. But no, she meant literally. So I did. Mallory wasn't home. April was at preschool. I climbed the rickety fold-down ladder and stuck my head into the darkness with a flashlight. I hadn't been up there in months. Maybe years. We stored a few old boxes there, some Christmas decorations, a busted suitcase or two. But wedged between two bins was a small metal lockbox. Something I'd never seen before. It wasn't locked. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Handwritten, in her handwriting. I read the first one and felt my throat close. It started with, if I could live 2 lives at once, I would. They weren't written to me. They were written to him. Some of them were dated back before we were even married. She wrote about her doubts. About how she loved me but didn't feel alive. About how he made her feel seen. Like she was a person, not just a mother or a wife or an obligation. One letter, the most recent, ended with, I'm close to making a choice. I just need one more sign. A choice. She was on the edge of choosing him. Leaving us. All of it. But then something strange happened. I found one letter folded inside another. Different handwriting. I realized it was his. Just one letter. But I read it 5 times. And what it said made my blood run cold. He wasn't just involved. He was manipulating her. Encouraging her. Telling her how to lie, when to lie, what words to use so I wouldn't suspect anything. He even joked about how easy it was to keep me distracted. In one line, he wrote, keep the earrings somewhere obvious. If he notices it and still says nothing, he's weaker than we thought. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a test. They were testing me. I didn't realize I was shaking until the letter slipped out of my hands and floated down the attic floor. Everything inside me was burning now, not from heartbreak, but from humiliation. They weren't just careless. They were confident. They thought I'd never do anything. Never fight back. Never even see it. And maybe they were right. Until now. Because now I wasn't just some clueless husband. I was a man with proof. And a plan. I didn't go back to the garage that night. I didn't sit in my car like some broken man praying for clarity. No. This time, I sat in my living room, at our kitchen table, right where she usually drank her tea, and looked out the window like the world was so simple and innocent. The folder was on the table. The letters. The tie. The hotel receipt. The photo of my daughter. Everything. I wanted her to see it. Not in anger, but in silence. Silence is heavier than yelling. It's harder to argue with. It doesn't give you room to twist the story. I was done with begging for honesty. I was going to hand her the truth and watch her either crumble or lie to my face one last time. She came home later than usual. Said the meeting at work had run long. She kissed April on the cheek, set her purse down, and turned the corner into the kitchen. Then she saw it. I didn't say a word. I just looked up. Her eyes went straight to the letters first. Her breath caught, just slightly, but I saw it. She reached for the hotel receipt next, like maybe she could crumple it before I saw it. As if that would undo anything. Then, finally, her eyes landed on the photo. The one with April. In her room. Sleeping. And the reflection of the man in the hallway mirror. That's when the color left her face. I spoke before she could. Tell me how he got in our house. She didn't answer. I stood up slowly, not yelling, not accusing, just done. I was going to forgive you. I was going to believe the whole one-night story, even after the earring, the hotel, the receipts. I was willing to believe it was just a desperate mistake. But he's been here. In our home. while April was asleep, while I was away, and you knew. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Then finally, I didn't let him. Colby, I swear, I didn't know he took that photo. I didn't know. No. Stop. I held up the tie. You kept this. Why? Her voice cracked. Because I didn't want to forget how it felt to be seen. That sentence broke me more than the cheating. She didn't even try to pretend she loved me anymore. Not really. She just loved being seen, being wanted, being desired. And somewhere along the line, I stopped making her feel that way. But I also realized something. This wasn't just about him. This was about her. She invited this into our lives. Lied for it. Covered for it. Hid letters in our attic like some twisted diary of her second life. I looked her in the eyes and said, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to threaten. But I'm not going to protect your secret either. You lost that right when you let him walk our halls and watch our daughter sleep like she was part of your fantasy life. That's when she panicked. She dropped to her knees, literally, dropped, and started sobbing. Said she didn't know what she was doing. That she never planned for it to go that far. That she thought she could handle it. That she thought Arden would eventually go away. But then she admitted something I didn't expect. He said he wanted to replace you. That he could do everything better, be a better father, better husband, better provider. I didn't believe him at first, but I let him keep talking. That's when everything clicked. This wasn't just a fling. This man had intentions. He was grooming her to abandon her life. Slowly, strategically, and she let him. I looked at her on the floor. The woman I married. The mother of my child. And all I saw was someone I didn't recognize. Then I told her something I knew would hit her harder than anything else. I already talked to a lawyer. She froze. Not to file anything yet, but to protect April. Because if he ever comes near her again, even by accident, I will make sure the law knows who you invited into this house. She started begging then. Swore she'd cut ties. Swore it was over. Swore she'd do anything to fix it. But here's the thing she didn't understand. She broke something that day. Not just my trust, not just our marriage, but the structure of who we were. And I wasn't sure it could be rebuilt. And I hadn't even told her about Lena yet. Because Lena had given me one more thing. A video. And I hadn't watched it. Not yet. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. I lay in the guest room with my phone in my hand. That final message from Lena just sitting there like a loaded gun in my pocket. A video. She said she debated sending it at all. Said it was taken by accident. By a hallway security camera at the hotel that her manager had forgotten to wipe from the system. I should have watched it right away. I couldn't. It's one thing to imagine betrayal. To put it together through receipts and photos and shadows and mirrors. It's something else entirely to see it. In motion. In real time. By 4:11 a.m. I gave in. I opened the file. It started with a hallway view, blurry, a bit grainy. A timestamp in the corner, April 11th. The day after my birthday. The night Mallory told me she had a migraine and needed to stay at her mother's house with April while I went out and had some fun. I remember I felt guilty that night. I didn't want to go out. But she insisted. And there she was. Clear as day. Coming down the hallway of the Valley Nora in a silver dress I'd never seen before. Laughing. Holding Arden's hand. They stopped in front of the door. Room 212. She leaned against the wall. He moved in close. She looked happy. Young. Like I hadn't seen her in years. Then she pulled something out of her purse. A small box. And handed it to him. He opened it and laughed. It was a bracelet. I could see the glint of it even in the low lighting. I didn't even know she had a bracelet like that. They kissed. Not a quick one. The kind of kiss people have when they don't care who's watching. Like this was their world, not mine. Like I never existed. Then she said something I will never unhear. It came through barely audible, but it was enough. She whispered, just give me time. I'm almost there. Almost where? I paused the video. Stared at the still frame. Her eyes were bright. Hopeful. He was grinning like a man who'd already won. That moment crushed something in me. She wasn't conflicted. She wasn't being manipulated. She wasn't spiraling in guilt. She was planning to leave me. Maybe not that week. Maybe not that month. But it was in motion. A quiet operation happening behind the scenes, with my trust as the fuel. I walked out of the guest room just as the sun started to rise. The house was quiet. April was still asleep. Mallory was on the couch, clutching a pillow like it was an anchor in a sinking ship. She didn't hear me come in. I dropped my phone on the coffee table. She looked up like she'd been caught stealing oxygen. I saw the video, I said. She didn't ask which one. She just nodded, eyes hollow. I was going to tell you, she mumbled. No, you weren't. You were hoping you'd never have to. She sat up. It's over, Colby. It's done. I haven't seen him since. Since you told him you were almost ready to leave me. That shut her up. Her hand went to her mouth. Not because she was shocked. Because she got caught. There was no anger in me anymore. Just ice. Cold, smooth, heavy ice in my chest where love used to be. Then I said something that came out so calmly, I surprised myself. You need to leave. Today. Take whatever you need. But by tonight, I want you out of this house. She stared at me like she didn't understand the words. But Colby, what about April? What do I tell her? I stood up and looked her straight in the eyes. Tell her the truth. Tell her mommy made a mistake, but not a just one-night kind of mistake. The kind of mistake you rehearse. The kind that wears lipstick and books hotel rooms and sends love notes behind locked doors. She started crying again. Not like before. This time it was real. Messy. Collapsing. But I didn't care anymore. I walked away. I walked upstairs and sat beside April's bed while she slept, one hand gently brushing her hair. That's when it hit me. She almost gave this up. This life. This little girl. This home. For a man who took selfies in mirrors and talked about replacing me like he was applying for a job. She almost let it all go. And now? Now she'd lost everything. Mallory left that evening. She packed in silence, moving slowly like someone walking through the ruins of her own life. I didn't watch her go. I was in April's room, reading her a book about stars. She didn't understand what was happening yet, and I wasn't about to poison her world with betrayal. Not yet. Not ever, if I could help it. All she knew was that mommy was going to stay somewhere else for a little while. That was enough, for now. The first few days after she left were brutal. I won't lie. The house felt quieter, but not in a peaceful way. In a haunted way. Her perfume still clung to the upstairs bathroom. Her mug sat on the drying rack for days before I realized I hadn't moved it. Everything about the place screamed that something had been ripped away. But slowly, that silence changed. April and I started filling the space with laughter again, real laughter. Pancake breakfasts turned into messy, syrupy masterpieces. Couch cushions became castles. I was there for everything now, no longer distracted, no longer doubting. I was all in, fully present, even if I was still healing. I blocked Arden, not just from my phone, but from my mind. I stopped obsessing over who he was and why he thought he could walk into my life and dismantle it. He wasn't important anymore. He lost. Not because I fought harder, but because he bet on someone who didn't even know her own worth. Let them have each other, if they even still talk. I'm done carrying that weight. As for Mallory, we agreed on a custody schedule that put April's well-being first. That's what mattered. Not the past. Not the hurt. Just the little girl who deserved two loving parents, even if they didn't live under the same roof anymore. Weeks turned into months. And then, something unexpected happened. At a neighborhood picnic, I met someone. Her name's Dana. She teaches art at the local elementary school. April spilled juice on her sandals, and I apologized with a red face and too many napkins. But Dana just laughed and said, "It's not a party until someone causes a scene." We talked. For hours. About nothing and everything. And it was easy. Not heavy. Not complicated. Just two people who had both been through their own storms, finally finding clear skies again. We're not rushing anything. We go slow. We build. Dana knows about the past. She doesn't flinch. She listens. She understands. And when she looks at me, I don't feel broken. I feel seen. In a way that doesn't require betrayal to exist. One night, as I was tucking April into bed, she looked up at me and said, "Daddy, you smile more now." That hit me harder than any betrayal ever could. Because she was right. This isn't the story I ever wanted to tell. But it's the one I lived. And somehow, through all the wreckage, I found something stronger than bitterness, louder than heartbreak. I found peace. And for the first time in a long, long time, I'm finally okay.